All right, we are back. We haven't been in a long while.
Yep, we've been MIA.
Yes, but things have been happening on my side and your side, different
Yeah.
ways. Um, but we're going to talk about Amos today.
Oh
Amos is
yeah,
such a
right.
short,
Because this is like our first one. I mean, our first Amos session.
yes, first Amos session. That's kind of like a hard first Amos session. We finished. What was the first one?
Micah.
Micah. Okay, that was really interesting. So now we're in the book of Amos. All right. And we, again, just, try to answer a question from this search to scripture, very basic. Again, from the 1940s. And the question, I think we picked the question last time.
Yes. Right? I don't remember the exact thing, but I think it's just, do you want me to say it now?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you were just mentioning it and asking.
Sure.
So what I remember is that, the question is, what are the sins of each of the nations? I think that's what it was.
Right.
But yes. I don't know if there was a second part to that. I just remember the sins of the nations.
Yeah. The second question is that what may be learned from this about the things, God hates? Learned. Old English.
Okay.
Okay. Learned. And then
I think British still say that.
They do.
I feel like that's British English too. I'm not sure. Maybe.
We are we're gonna try to, it's gonna be both chapters 1 and 2 for this question.
Yeah.
I still have highlights from my previous
Same. I just
our
use my
previous
pencil.
Conversation.
I couldn't find my highlighter, but I still see.
Did you get an NET yet?
No.
Hashtag yet. Plugging.
I'm gonna get one. Definitely. Right now, I'm still using my phone.
There's a cute one. I think I told you about this before. The Alabaster company. It's like a magazine.
Yeah. You sent me a link. Yeah.
It's like a magazine. So cute with pictures. I mean, I like seeing pictures.
Me
it's
too.
Kind of like a magazine style.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get in. What are the particular sins of the nations that we can find in chapters 1 and 2? And then what can we learn from this about the things that God hates? You want to go first. I'm telling you, you want to go first. Do you want to go first?
Do I?
Please do. Please.
All right, let's see what I can remember. So the first one is Damascus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their sin is that God, they ripped through Gilead with threshing swords. But so they did I think they went through a whole community and sort of attacked them violently and inhumanely. Mm-hmm. And so God's not happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're talking about threshing, and I think you were explaining that or describing that thing, the whole threshing thing. I think it's to separate the stalk from something. I read something about it, but I don't know, the stalk from the grain or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Threshing sledges, iron teeth were boards embedded with iron teeth and pulled across the threshing floor to separate the grain from the chaff. So it's like an aggressive way to harvest.
Right.
Feels like iron teeth, and
that's how they treated those people of Gilead. So they were basically separating the good ones from, or the ones they wanted. Or was it their stuff that they were doing that I don't know if it's to the people themselves or to the stuff that they had, but I'm guessing it's all together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, taking advantage of what is beneficial for them, whether it's
Right.
the land or the people, whatever is they see as beneficial for them, they'll take it. I
Yeah.
mean, rip it,
Violently.
yeah,
Yeah.
aggressively.
Yeah. Okay, so then Gaza. Oh, do you want to do the second one?
Go for it, and then I'll add on if.
Okay, so I think the second one is Gaza. Yes, they deported a whole community and sold them to Edom, which I think is another nation.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. I think that's their main sin.
Yeah. They deported, this is in verse 6, chapter 1. They deported a whole community and sold them to Edom. And I think we talk about this like, deporting a whole community and then selling.
Slavery.
Yeah.
That's like the slave trade, right?
Yeah. Yep. It seems like, these, don't you think that these topics are still very much relevant today?
I think so. Maybe people actually there's some places where people like would go through a whole community and take away things. Like I'm just thinking about Nigeria, for instance, like a lot of kidnappings, like in some communities in the north, kids can't even go to school because they get
Wow.
kidnapped. And maybe for different reasons, but forcefully without, caring about other people.
Yeah.
And like in the form of so many other things like robberies and stuff. Because that's still very much prevalent today.
Mm-hmm.
I was just gonna say before this, before I thought about it, that maybe not the same way, but I think that it's actually happening the same way in some places.
Yeah, I was gonna add here that our church has been involved with this project in Nepal, wherein we built a house, a safe house for women, so that they will not be taken in order to be sold as however purposes that would be beneficial for the community, or sometimes even for family members, like selling their own family members.
Yeah, that happens a lot here. There's a community actually very close to where I live where the kids there, the parents basically sell them to people. And the interesting thing is that there's actually a church that is involved in this. I mean, I think the church is helping out now, so but still, like the church is the one that gives these children out to other people to help out, and like some of these kids that go to school and all of that.
Yeah.
Sad. Yeah.
I think okay, this is usually, I know that we get really affected when we talk about slavery, but I feel like we miss the point that sometimes we only see the oppressor and the slaves, but we miss another contributing factor, which is sometimes part of the family members who would sell them, right? Or part of your own group or your people group that actually sells your own people group for slavery. Isn't that like the case? And I feel like it's almost always like, oh, there's just two sides, the one who oppressed and then the one who slaves. But oftentimes, there are people who are ushering this kind of dirty work.
Yeah, that's true. Because when I was learning about the slave trade here in Ghana, they told us that some of the chiefs sold people to, the oppressors. But I also think that, yes, that's true, because the chiefs definitely had power and control over everyone. But there were some instances where they forcibly took people, right? So like those happen simultaneously. The chiefs selling and making money from that. But I also think that in some cases they really had no choice.
They were taken.
Because they were overpowered, yeah.
Okay, so both. It happens.
Yeah, so both, yeah.
Wow, yeah. I mean, the same in the Philippines. We have the same problem, like family members selling or taking advantage of their own, like family members participating in any form of abuse. Crazy. And I think it's good to put that in, reality, because sometimes when we read the Bible, it's almost like the Bible is always like far off, right?
Yeah.
And then we say like, and then our question here is like, what are the sins of the nation that God calls for judgment? And then immediately we think about it like, wait, what? So like God, God, there's a judgment. Because when we read the Bible, it seems like, whoa, it's so far off, but then we bring this into reality, like how awful that is.
Yeah,
right?
and the fact that it still happens, like it's still turbulent,
Yes. I remember this awesome documentary that we watched. I think it's entitled Lion. Have you heard of this documentary? In India, the boys that are being sold by their own, again, family members or their own people for the sake of sexual abuse. It's crazy. Like, and this is what God is seeing, like there will be judgment in this nation. And I think before, when we were kind of like wrestling with the question, like sins of the nations, like that hasn't occurred to, at least, to us, like personally. Like sometimes you always think of sin as like a personal sin, but then this question is talking about like sins of the nations. That
yeah. Oh yeah, we were talking about that collective sin the last time.
Yeah. That there are consequences for a nation for sins of the nations.
Exactly. Like even if you're not individually part, like of it, if you're not directly involved, you're still a part of the nation that carried out whatever sin it was. Right. So it's like you have a responsibility once you're part of the nation. I mean, sometimes it's actually hard to stop it, because I'm just thinking about, maybe slave trade. Maybe there were people that were against it, but it's like, okay, but there were fewer people. So how could they have stopped that,
Yeah. It would take together. Some, you need togetherness. It took the collective people to commit the sin. It would have to be together to counter that, to counter that sin.
Yeah.
But then I think even a more, intense question is the how part. Because then we find ourselves in this, you're in this camp and I'm in this camp. And that's also not helpful, because now we're lacking ways on how to actually, bridge the gap between, let's say, two different, understanding, right? Yeah. I'm going to turn off my video for a bit because I need to plug my, what do you call this? My charger. But yeah, you can keep going since we're recording.
Okay. Okay. So the third nation is, I don't know how to say this. Sorry. Tyre or
Tyre.
Tyre?
Yeah, I think Tyre.
Okay, Tyre. So the third nation is Tyre, and they sold a whole community to Edom as well.
What is up this? What is this up with like selling and deportation?
I know, a whole community. But then they also failed to observe a treaty between brothers.
Mm,
So they broke. Yeah, it says here in my version, they said it remembered not the brotherly covenant. So and then net was saying that was a treaty between brothers. So they didn't observe that, and that was their sin.
so you're saying that, sorry, say that one more time. They failed to see each other as brothers. Is that what you're trying to say?
They failed. No, they remembered not the brotherly covenant. That's what mine says. But then in net, it said that they failed to observe a treaty between brothers. So I think they maybe, I don't know what the treaty was about, but they maybe agreed on something, and then the other people went against them.
Right.
By not keeping that covenant, like the covenant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Should we move on?
Is that it?
Yeah, that's what I got from them.
Okay.
For attire. Do you have anything to add?
So I think so you're in verse 9 and then in 11, because Edom has committed 3 crimes. Okay, he chased his brother with a sword. He wiped out his allies. In his anger, he tore them apart without stopping to rest. So, like violence. And in the verse 13, because the Ammonites have committed 3 crimes, the Ammonites, they ripped open Gilead's pregnant women so they could expand their territory. Oh, very graphic. Like these, I think that's
are you on
another.
the Ammonites?
Yeah, Ammonites and.
Oh wait, did we do Edom?
I just went through it really fast.
Oh, okay.
It chased his brother.
Yeah, the Ammonites. That was the one. Yeah, they were the ones who ripped up the women with children. I actually looked it up, and it happened. Like that was something that would happen when there was a military invasion.
Oh wow. Well, what does that mean to rip open Gilead's pregnant women? You mean like
I think they literally cut open pregnant women.
Oh my word. But how would that contribute so they could expand their territory?
You know, when they invade, I don't know, they're just violent. They try to kill people, I guess.
Right. So maybe like even prohibiting like future generations to
exactly
flourish.
Prohibiting procreation. Yeah.
Wow. So that so that they could expand their territory, so that like
there'll be
no future threats.
Right. Especially boys. I think they were targeting boys, but I don't think during those days you can really tell for sure who's carrying a boy and who's carrying a girl.
So they just rip the pregnant women so that they don't have to decide, they don't have to discern if it's a boy or a girl.
A girl, yeah.
So oh my word.
How do you even just look at a pregnant woman and not have mercy? Why? How evil do you have to be?
Girl, okay. So today, right? It doesn't have to be ripped open pregnant women. They don't have to literally ripped open, but they can still administer some kind of no procreation.
Yeah, I see. I know.
Right?
I just thought of something. I think that one time, I don't know what it was, but someone was talking about a sin, and the way they described the sin just seemed so gory. And then the person was like, but and just mentioned something simple that was equivalent to that huge sin that we were all like grossed out about. Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's true.
Right? Because now I think we are desensitized because it's not as gory.
Yeah. And it's
as
also not done
described
in
here.
ways. Yeah, it's not done in ways, as described here, because nobody literally goes to open a pregnant woman's stomach. I mean, it happens, but
Yeah,
but at least with consent. So
it can be in many forms nowadays,
that's true.
but not as, violent as we would see it here. Um, but it's still, the same. And I
Yeah.
think that's the danger. I think that's the danger for us, is when we are desensitized, in the culture that we're in, and kind of minimizing and saying it's okay.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm
Yeah.
talking about like just any, any sin at all. So now we're like, oh, well, other people have done that and they're okay. Like just, kind of like
Exactly.
minimizing or like desensitizing people or normalizing.
Yeah. And so many people seek, validation from these other people and sometimes it's even people that people look up to that promote these things. And they're like,
Yeah.
well, this person thinks that it's okay, and they're way up there. So
Yeah.
who am I?
Yeah. But also, I think we also want to acknowledge that there could be places who still does this violently.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Right.
I think everywhere, just in different forms.
Yeah. But I know a friend, her name is Tara, and she works in Sierra Leone, and her organization is about taking care of women, because women who are pregnant, they have a high mortality rate in that country. And like they're pregnant and they still carry the same chores, like every day, even even in full term.
Yeah.
So mortality rate is high, not just for the baby, but for the mom. Crazy.
Yeah. I think it's also as a whole nation, like there's some nations that are against a certain group of people when it comes to a certain group of women when it comes to childbirth. For instance, like Black maternal mortality is also on the rise right now. And it's a whole system that's fighting against these women and preventing them from successfully having their babies.
Yeah.
And also in other places like developing countries. I visited some health facilities last week, and I saw the places that women have to go and give birth. And I was like, this is real. Like, this is not a movie. This is actually real. It's like in some of the facilities, they didn't have a place for women to give birth. So the community came together and put like a mud hut together, like built a mud hut for women to give birth. And we went with other people to visit that place, and people were like, even some people would not keep their animals in here.
Wow.
Just because of how it looks. But women are expected to come in here and give birth just because they're living in rural areas and they don't have access to. Some of these places were just not appropriate for women to have their babies and they don't have resources. They don't have, and because of that, nurses won't go there, doctors won't go there. And so they're on their own, technically.
Wow.
And so there's just ways that, so many, like the systems, governments and people are against women. And I can definitely see that happening.
Wow. Crazy. Yeah. I mean, we haven't even talked about, like, let's say, in other countries, like they have one-child policy, right?
Yeah.
Even, that is, government policy. Like, wow, you don't even have a choice. Anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, policies that are preventing women from having kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. We live in a crazy world.
I know.
I think it's
I know.
often.
When I was reading this, it did not even occur to me. I was like, this is crazy. Who rips babies out of their mother?
That's the
And now
thing
I'm just like,
though.
oh.
It's like bam, 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 here, here, here. It's just in different forms. But here's the
Now
thing.
I'm thinking
I
about
think,
all the ways.
yeah. And the thing about Old Testament, or now well, Old Testament, and then we're actually in in the 12 prophets, and how oftentimes we read it just like, oh my, this is such old cases, like,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
then when we talk about it, reality sets in, like, this is not as old as we would imagine it to be. I mean,
Exactly.
these issues are still happening. And I think the 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 bad part about reading the Old Testament is that oftentimes we hear the gist of the Old Testament is that God judges, right? And
Yeah.
it's like taken out of the context. Oh yeah, God's just really like judge, judgment. It's all about judgment. But then have you looked through what people are actually doing?
Exactly. Because yeah, I mean, even I do this sometimes, and it's like, okay, so God is going to just condemn reading all these punishments that these people are gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to focus on those things and be like, okay, God is like just gonna do all of these, but then
Yeah.
forgetting that these people have done something, and their
Mm-hmm.
sins are not small,
Yeah. Yeah. And we're not condemning, or we're not saying, well, we're not saying that this is the end of the story, but
Right.
oftentimes, God has been misrepresented and then immediately, um, thought of us like only this type of God. And then, well, how about we just start opening the pages in our Bible and see what was actually going on? And for the
Exactly.
people who are victims in this kind of situations, like, who would
Mm-hmm.
they look for?
Right. Who is fighting for those people? And it's
Yeah,
God, and that's his
yeah.
way of fighting.
Where
Yeah.
would they put hope? In situations like this, where in everywhere they look like I have zero connections, like I have zero influence, I have, zero
Zero
resources.
power.
Like, where? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you were talking about that, issue you said in this rural areas where women were supposed to give birth, and like,
Yeah.
people who have animals, they won't even put their animals in there. So if I'm in that situation, like one of the women who's about to give birth, like, where would I look for help?
Exactly. Where's my
you know,
hope? Like, am I
yeah,
condemned just because?
yeah.
Yeah. And
Where
God
is
has
my
promised to fight for these
resources?
people, right? Like he's fighting for like the poor, the destitute, those people who have no voice. So I guess that's his
Yes,
way of fighting.
yes,
Because then it's
always.
unfair and he's not just.
Yes. So maybe before we ask, well, he's not judged, well, where are you sitting from?
Right.
Where are you sitting from? Maybe you need to sit where these women are coming from before you
Yeah.
can actually say, well, for, I think for those who've been oppressed, to the phrase God is just is a phrase of hope.
That's
you
true.
know, you know. But if you're sitting somewhere else, you would definitely have that, judgmental pointing finger that your God is
Exactly.
like
Because
this.
you're not experiencing what the people on the other, and are experiencing. You're
Yeah.
just here and you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, we're getting so intense about this, like, topic. We're getting emotional.
We are, because it makes sense to not, because I think a lot of the time, even I haven't thought about it that way. I mean, I do, because sometimes it's like, okay, yes, there's got to be a place where you hope, even just in our everyday lives, right? Like, sometimes you just need to hold on to that thing that God's fighting for you, because sometimes things are
Yes.
bigger than you, and you're just like,
Yes.
I don't know what to do. I'm helpless. And you keep going. You just need to know that, one day, all these people, that are oppressing you, these people that are, just basically making you suffer. Like
Yeah.
they're going
Yeah.
to be judged. You know,
Yeah.
it gives you hope.
Yeah.
Because what's the point of everything if they're
Yes.
just going to get away with it? You know?
Yes. And I think it's not fair to say, well, they just really need to work hard, you know, to get themselves out of the situation. I think
I
that's a
hate it when people
very,
say that. Like, because people keep
that's
saying,
a,
oh, like, you know, some self-help books, I just like stopped. Like, I've never even been into them, but like, sometimes, you know, I'll just pick one up and I'm just like, I can't get through this book. I don't want to get, and even not even self-help books, but like, you know, these days, like there's social media and people would just be like, oh, you have the same number of hours as this person. Yes, I do, but do I have the same resources? Like, you know,
exactly.
and like, what
Or
about the people?
opportunities. Yes. Resources,
Exactly. I know the
opportunities.
people that this person knows. It's not just about the time that I have. Like, that's
Yeah.
unfair for people that we saw kids that were walking home from school when we went to those rural areas, and this kid was holding his shorts because the shorts were bigger than him, and that's probably passed down and he can't do anything about it. He's holding his
Wow.
shorts, he's not wearing shoes, carrying his books. He just came out of school. Now this kid is competing with kids that are, you know, picked up by their parents after school and, you know, sat home with lunch and everything. Like, but you're telling me that these kids have the same time and you're expecting this kid to actually be as successful as this kid. You know,
Right.
like, it's not fair. It's just not.
Yeah. I think I like, I'm not sure if you've heard of this Nigerian writer, um, Adichie
Yeah,
Chimamanda.
Chimamanda. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
you
her.
know, yeah, and how she was saying like the danger of single story. And I think this is one of the
Mm,
reasons why we're doing this. It's like when we read the Bible, we are from different cultural backgrounds. You know, I'm from the
yeah.
Philippines, you're from Ghana. And sometimes when we read this, like, this is so real and this is still very much happening. We're flipping the script, girl. You
We
know, yes, because the danger of single story is that what she was trying to say, Chimamanda, is that it's not that it's untrue, but that the story is not complete.
yeah.
You know,
Because everybody's
so
looking at it from different
yes,
angles.
from different lens, and we're coming in here and saying like, you know, hopefully expanding um our world. The same thing for us. I mean, I lived in, you know, United States, like you live in the, you know, United States and other parts of the country. And I'm not saying they don't have a contribution. They, you know, everybody has a contribution, but we have to be aware that it's not just a single story, you know, that's incomplete. So
Yeah.
when we read this verses and we look at these injustices, like this is still happening, this is still very much true.
Yeah. That's
i
true.
can't I can't believe this, like these, you know, prophets so intense.
I know, we just went from a 0 to 100 really fast.
And then
No,
we're
I
like
just get
all our
so.
experience, like boom boom, what about this, what about that, what about this? Oh man.
No, I just needed to process all the things that I saw last week because I'm still recovering. I
Girl,
can't.
see.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
like people
Moa.
who, yeah, and people need to see that or hear that side of the story, right?
Yeah.
That when we read this, like, yes, God is just, yes, that is my hope. You know, I'm hoping for that because I have no other hope, you know,
Yeah.
in place in my situation here.
Yeah. And some people really have nothing. Like, it's
Yeah.
not, yeah,
Ooh.
just absolutely nothing.
Yes. Hmm.
All right, I think we're on Moab.
Yeah, we're moving on. Moving on. Whew. Oh God, help
Moving
us.
on.
It's so
So
hard to move on. Yeah.
these people's sin is actually that they desecrated the tomb of a king, I think, and burned his bones
Mm.
um, into some type of calcine substance and then used it as plaster. That's what I read from NET.
As
Like,
plasters?
Yeah, as plaster.
Wow.
I think it's for their like buildings or something.
Mm. Wow.
And that was a very sin back then, and I think it should be now. It's still a great sin, but I think people do it. People dig up people's graves and steal stuff from them.
Wow.
That's so
Woo.
disrespectful.
Yeah.
Like very disrespectful. Why?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Like I said, like I can't even, like, I don't even know.
All right, well, we move on to Judah.
Yeah.
Judah rejected the
Judah.
Lord. Yeah.
Now this is important because, like, why was Judah in line with all the other nations, that God was judging?
Oh.
Right? Because, like, through the Old Testament, we were, thinking that Judah is a special
To God, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now, like, he's in line.
Yeah. They rejected the Lord's law.
Mm.
I think that's what they felt like, they've been saved, like they get saved, they go back. Yeah, it was just like a cycle of
right.
Yeah. And they did not obey his commands, and they were worshiping false gods.
Mm-hmm.
That was their sin.
Look how I feel. Okay, this is unique that the sin for Judah is rejected the Lord's law. They did not obey his commands. Their false gods, to which their fathers were loyal, led them astray. Something to do with devotion to God. Right?
Yeah, it's slightly different from the other ones. I mean, all of them, they're in a way rejecting God's law, but the other ones were kind of different from Judah. Judah is more like the Lord's law.
Well, here's one of my insights. Maybe, I could be wrong, but how we're talking about how gory some of these, examples are that the nations has committed, but then the rejection of the Lord's law and the disobedience of his command is kind of like equalized with how gory
exactly
the sin is. So
maybe just a different type of gory, but still.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Not obeying his commands is the same as ripping a baby out of a woman.
Yeah. Like I don't know. It's like what I'm, I think what the insight that I'm getting is that, okay, whoa, Judah. Okay, I think the other one is like Israel, right? So now these two, Judah and Israel, were placed within the nations that God has been, God has judged the surrounding nations of Judah and Israel, even though we know in the Old Testament that they were, Israel and Judah were the first, the people group that God decided to choose, to be in covenant with, to show other nations that you are to be a blessing, right? Covenant to be a blessing to other nations. So now they're in line with all the other nations, and their sins are paralleled to the goriness.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that puts it in a whole different light.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we should get in Israel's sin and then like sort of bring them all together. So this is actually interesting. So they sold
the innocent
people for silver. And then they pushed the destitute away. And then also something about moral purity, where a man and his son were chasing the same woman or something. And then, but there was one that where is it, underlined, that was very interesting to me. It talked about, where is it? Oh, eight is the one. and they lay themselves down upon clothes laid to pledge by every altar, and they drink the wine of the condemned in the house of their God. So it's like the levies that they stole from other people, they were giving back to God. Right.
Well, now this is like a combination of the other nations and the saints, you know, like.
Exactly. Like you're stealing from people, but you're giving it back to God.
Oh my word.
And then they were stretching themselves on clothes that they they stole or something.
Yeah.
It's pledged by every altar. Yeah.
It's like there's no more distinction here. It's
No,
like all of the above. Let's put them all in one
together, box them in.
Yeah. It's hypocrisy, isn't it? Like it's just full of hypocrisy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
That's so true.
Wow.
Anyways, I mean, this is still happening, right?
Oh yes. Wow.
And then they made the Nazarites drink wine, and I think the Nazarites were not supposed to drink; they were forbidden from drinking wine, and that was it. So they were influenced. They were not only sinning against God, but they were also dragging some other people down.
Yes. Wow. This is a whole new level. Yeah, that's like a cultural value for Nazarites, and then bringing them down, like and then here
I like that. Sorry, go ahead.
It's just the note on like you commanded the prophets do not prophesy. It's even just it's almost like you do you and we do we.
Yeah.
Let's just keep this.
Stay in your lane. I'm gonna stay in mine.
Yeah. Don't mess. You do you and we do we. Yeah.
I was gonna say before I forget that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that each nation had a sin that was specific to their culture. Like the Nazarites not drinking wine. Like he didn't really, maybe the other people did that, but I'm just thinking that it was forbidden for them to drink wine. And so that's why they were specifically, like, God didn't say these other people shouldn't drink wine, but just because you pledge something, you should stick to it, right? Yeah, so that's what I was getting, that like every nation has their own laws and whatever, and you have to stick to it. It's not like a general thing where everyone's like, okay, we're all like, I mean, there's certain things that are general, but it seems to me like you're holding them accountable to what they said they were going to do.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Well, this has been really, how are we going to bring this in? How are we going to bring this in? I think, for me, it's good to think about these things, because oftentimes we're so probably quick to just jump into the finish line in the happy ending story.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're forgetting, and maybe it's good to be reminded that this is how awful we are, that needed an impossible kind of salvation that God provided for us, and it makes me value or receive salvation more as a gift every day, because we're not exempted from all these. I know we talk about this, but like I'm not exempted from the sins that I've committed, and it's just looking at this, like it looks so helpless. Like yeah.
And thinking about this, like, we really, I think that we really needed, I mean, they really needed Jesus, we really need Jesus. It's like it just makes me think of the gravity of things, and like you were saying, reconciling that with salvation. Like these are huge sins, and you know, like having someone just carry all of these things on them.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And you said like the gravity. Sometimes we miss on looking and reflecting at the gravity and what put Jesus to death.
Yeah.
You know, because now we talk about, oh yeah, Jesus died on the cross, like very casually.
For our sins.
Well, yeah, for our sins. You know, I mean, we have a song for it, right? Like it's so, we know that phrase, but to go back and see the gravity of our sins that put Jesus to death would just give us a different light about the gift of salvation.
Yeah, and I think that's why the Old Testament, is important, because
and
we are reminded of what sins.
Yes, and the judgment of God placed on the cross, right? Whew. Okay.
Yeah, like look at the severity of like the punishments that each nation was supposed to receive, and now adding all of that to other people's sins, the previous generations, the future generations, like all on one person.
Yeah. Oh man, crazy. Wow. Well, that is Amos study number 1 for us on Amos chapters 1 and 2.
Like, can you believe that this is just chapter 1 and 2?
I know. I wasn't expecting all my emotions were just coming out like crazy.
Hear me like breathe out.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But this
was intense.
It was really helpful. Not just helpful, but I hope, I hope that the Holy Spirit will, for those of you who are listening, we pray and hope that the Holy Spirit would stir up something in your soul about some of these that are still probably being practiced in your community. You need to flip the script.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Okay, well, girl, I'll talk to you next week.
Yes. Next week.
What's
for
that?
Amos 3 and 4.
Yeah, right? Amos 3 and 4. Yeah. Crazy exciting.
Yeah. Now I'm more excited about this book. I mean, not that I was not already excited. It's just like Micah, though. Not knowing what you're gonna.
Yes, I feel like we have the same thing. Like, oh my gosh, like Micah, like I don't even know. And then we get into it, like, whoa, holy moly! And then again, Amos, like, why are we picking Amos? Like,
yeah. Like Amos doesn't play; it just starts.
Yeah.
It just hits the ground running.
Yeah, wow. He's like, I don't have time. I only have like 9 chapters. You guys, this is what it is. I'm gonna call it what it is.
Yeah. Anyway, this is great. I learned a lot.
The same. Me too. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, girl. I'm gonna stop the recording now, and we'll see you next week.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.